All right, so now we're going to move to the structural block-in. So this really helps us learn how to create volume in our poses, because if we really look at the figure, then we recognize that the figure is made up of various shapes and forms. We can find cubes and rectangles. We can find cylinders and cones and even spheres. So we can start to understand the basic shape of the figure by breaking it down into a structural block-in, as we call it. So I still always start my structural block-ins with a basic gesture. So I will just kind of try and find the basic, lines of the pose here, so I understand. So I get some lines down and just kind of figure out where is everything gonna kind of go. I just really like to have something on the page to reference and look at, rather than trying to I'm gonna start with the arm and then next thing you know, it's out of proportion to the torso and the legs, right? So if I start with a basic gesture, then I can start to really just get something down that I can look at here. So you can probably barely see it because I did it pretty light. So I'll make it a little bit darker here for you so you can see it, right? I started with that curve from the neck down through the spine and the torso. I'm exaggerating it a little bit here. I threw a little cylinder or oval in here to figure out kind of just where the hips were and the back leg, and then I'm able to, put the arm, sort of line the arms in and give a sense of the head. And now I have some basic gesture lines to start with. Now, what we can do here is, if we think about the torso is really like a rectangle, right? And it's got dimension to it. So it's like a cube, cubular rectangle, right? And on this top plane, right, the neck cylinder sort of sits, right? Then the sort of sphere of the head. Technically, the head is kind of made up of multiple shapes. We kind of have a more of a round sphere here, and then what we have, which is kind of called the facial shield a little bit, right? And then that is the jaw line. We have the center line of the face, and then the eyes wrap around that. And if we use this line here with the eyes, we can really think about what direction the head is facing and angled at, right? And so now I have some good volumes here. I'm starting to take these gesture lines that I've got and turn them into three-dimensional shapes, right? And then I have sort of this rectangle here of the torso. There's kind of another one in my image here where the sort of abdomen kind of turns into almost another sort of rectangular space here before it gets into the hips, which is kind of like another rectangle, if you will. It has a little bit of we can kind of put in the tapered feel where the groin kind of comes down here, right? And then that transitions into the legs, which is kind of like a tapered cylinder. yeah, I think my legs kind of look a little bit like that. And then we have sort of a sphere of the knee area, which then becomes sort of another tapered cylinder of the calf, which then continues tapering as another cylinder a little bit further into the sort of joints of the ankle here. And then usually when I'm starting the feet, I kind of just leave them as a kind of as like a triangular shape. So it starts to kind of block that in here. Notice I'm making mine a little bit elongated again, right? So that's something I'll come in and fix again later as I am refining. Now I can kind of come in with the other leg here, which is very flexed in the image. But it's ultimately, you know, another sort of tapering cylinder. We've got the sphere of the knee here, and then the tapering cylinder of the calf, of the lower leg, lower calf. We sort of have the heel of the foot here, right? A triangle in the arch of the foot and the rest of the foot, and then kind of another little elongated oval for where the toes would be. Now I can kind of put the arms in a little bit, start working the arms. So you know, we have the shoulders here, and that tapers down into the elbow area, right? So we can kind of create one long tapering cylinder here that turns into the elbow joint here, and then we can build off of that with one more sort of tapering cylinder to then create the forearm. And then the hand is, yeah, kind of again, just like a bit triangular, trapezoidal type of shape here to begin with. And then the other arm here is kind of doing the same thing, right? If we could see through it, we'd have the cylinder of the arm. If we could see through like the shoulder and the torso, we'd see this cylinder sort of attaches on this other, you know, this other plane on the other side of the box, right? We've got our shoulder here. We've got, there's a fair amount of foreshortening happening here, which is making it a little bit trickier, but that's okay. We'll manage. And if I think what happened with this hard hand plane here, which it's hard to see because I'm drawing over the block in, so let me erase this here and you can see what I've done. So we have the sort of forearm cylinder, right? It kind of comes up like this. And then the hand is really kind of like a square initially here. So I kind of put myself in what looks like a kind of a square that's receding back towards the hand. And then that allows me to then have this plane here, which then I can kind of map the lines of my fingers out of, which are ultimately little cylinders as well. So I could ultimately start to add little cylinders here for each of the various hand joints, and that can help me map out my hand in a dynamic way, right? So we're kind of always looking for these forms, and this allows me to quickly block in the three-dimensional volume of the figure. This is really great for if you're trying to invent figures. A lot of comic artists will kind of do strategies like this, because then from here on, now I can I can start to refine, because I'm noticing, especially as I look at the images, my legs feel a little small compared to this. I made my legs a little bit short, right? And it feels a little narrow down here in the hips. So I can go ahead and start to make adjustments now. To get this to feel a little bit more accurate and really build the pose that I'm seeing here. That's a little bit stronger there. Now this leg feels a little bit more further back as well. I might make these a little bit larger here too. And now I can come in and I can start to add individual, I can start to make this feel a little bit more dynamic here based on the actual image, right? So this guy's pretty ripped here, so I can start to add in some of these muscles that I'm seeing a little bit more, exaggerate my shapes a little bit, make this a little bit more accurate to what I'm seeing. And I notice I made my figure a little bit elongated here, so I'm noticing I have to really adjust some things to get this to really work. If I wanted it to be very accurate, but that's part of the process of learning figure drawing, is just slowly learning to adjust and improve along the way and make corrections. Figure drawing is a long process of practice and learning. By all extent, I feel like I'm actually pretty mediocre at it. I know artists and people that are just really, really good at it because they really commit to it, right? That if you want to be a good figurative artist, I think you really have to commit to it and practice a lot, study with a lot of different artists and teachers. So you learn a lot of different strategies, and doing it for one little couple week module really isn't enough. But this whole point is just to give you a little bit of a, introduction into it a little bit. So you might, that way you can maybe be inspired to want to explore this a little bit more in the future in other classes. So that's kind of all we're doing in here. We're just sort of dipping our toe, if you will. But now I can start shading in a little bit more, building up some more volume. It looks a little more narrower on screen than it does in person. It's possible that the camera I'm using is sort of warping it a little bit, but but I can just kind of fix that along the way by just, I notice I don't even hardly erase when I'm drawing the figure. And I encourage you to just work on drawing through it. Like if you spend all this time erasing, you're going to kill your energy. You're going to kill the process of what you're seeing and being able to correct on the spot. And you're just going to spend all this time erasing, and it's going to create a lot of doubt. And I really encourage you just to spend more time focusing on the drawing, because the drawing materials are quite malleable, where you can build and layer as you go. And make edits on the fly. And then I don't do any really erasing until very late in the process, unless I have something real glaring inaccuracy. Maybe then I'll erase it. But even then, I try to just stick with drawing over and building. That way I'm not really wasting time erasing, and it keeps me really present with the pose. It will keep me moving through the pose quickly as I'm thinking it and thinking about the pose and trying to comprehend the various structures that I'm seeing, because that's what this is all about, is finding the structure and drawing it, right? If you spend time erasing and trying to get everything perfect, then you won't really learn, because you'll be focused too much on perfection rather than really understanding the mechanics of the figure, which is what will get you to becoming more skilled and perfect, if you will, in drawing the figure. Now that I have some decent lines on here, then I could come in and I can erase some areas as I'm polishing this figure up. And now we have this has taken me, I'm at 16 minutes now to go from a block in, using just basic forms, to creating a figure that's starting to be rendered in. So I could spend another 20 minutes on this, again, unifying my shadows like we did in the previous drawing. I can start to refine my volumes and forms a little bit more. I can, clean up lines that I no longer need. I can, darken areas in the background again, like I did before, to help push forward highlights that I might have in the foreground, and really start to build this figure, the structure and volume of this figure. So, there you have it. For your exercise here, you don't have to flesh it out. You can just stick with the block in, the geometric block in. So, but if you want to refine it, you're welcome to do that too. All right, folks. Hey, good work. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out.